Well, ladies and gentlemen, can you believe it? I have consumed a piece of media that came out in 2025. Is that the year? Somebody check the calendar. It's nearly over. Indeed, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is being reviewed here in PowerPoint form. Is everybody super excited? I bet they are. Now I'm distracting myself by trying to think if it is legitimately the first thing that's come out this year that I have consumed, and nothing else is jumping out at me, so this might be correct. I'm sure everybody is very interested in that fact, though. You can check the media checklist to see if that's true. But we have a whole little PowerPoint going on here. Importantly, this game is not yet on the media checklist because I have decided ethically that I will put it on the media checklist when I get the platinum, which I am intending to do, which might give you some insight on what I think of the game, but you'd kind of be wrong. And I guess we should probably get into the overall section. I don't know why I decided to play Expedition 33. It was a game people definitely talked about very, not in dulcet tones, whatever the opposite of that is. People were very happy about this game. They loved it when it came out in April, I believe. It is now the end of September. I think it had, I don't know if it's OpenCritic or Metacritic, it had like the highest rating ever at like a 97 or something. So the people did indeed love it quite a bit. Now I'm nervous I'm not recording, so we're going to do this. Oh my goodness, I am. So it's very highly regarded. It's turn-based, which I like. It has a very good conceit, or a premise, which we'll talk about a lot, actually. Which I think is probably why it succeeded in being as popular as it was. The conceit, if somehow you're watching this and you don't know, is that we're in like a fictional version of Paris. This is a French game made by French people. Though they were very direct and always saying in the marketing that the English voice acting is not the dub, it's like the original that they planned for or something. I remember hearing that a bunch. So I did play it in the dub. Even though it's not a dub, maybe. The English version I played through. Which probably wouldn't be the case in most JRPGs that I would play, though this is not technically a JRPG, because JRPG, easy for me to say, stands for Japanese Role-Playing Game, when this would be an FRPG. I think I heard Colin Moriarty call it a JS RPG, a Japanese-style RPG, which is probably the best descriptor. That'd be funny because there's always that debate in anime communities, right? If Avatar is an anime or these other things, or even Giga just came out with an anime, is that an anime? Maybe it is an AS-ame. an anime inspired cartoon. Anyway. Style. It wasn't even inspired. An AS. An ass. That's what I'd be calling it. That shitty Avatar show that I haven't seen. So I was into it from a bunch of things. I was explaining the premise. There's this fake France. It's in the middle of the ocean. The Eiffel Tower is like all bent and stuff. It's a fucked up city, you know. There's like shit floating everywhere, and it's all like physics are all distorted and stuff like that, and you're floating around and people have mechanical arms, so it's like this weird kind of steampunky, kind of futuristic, kind of magical aesthetic. It's a little tiny bit like Arcane, very different stylistically and tonally. Generally, but I guess the magic system and stuff is a little similar, where it's sort of like magic and fantasy and future and stuff like that. We do kind of get a date towards the end of the game, which is weird, but I guess we'll talk about that later. Anyway, there was a big apocalyptic event. There's this big being named the Paintress or whatever. She's off in the distance on the continent, whereas the fake Paris was thrown into the ocean away from the continent, which I assume is France. That's never really explicitly stated. They never actually say the name Paris or anything like that either, which is kind of funny. And every year, like, an eternal clock counts down, and everybody of that age dies, basically. They're, like, evaporated. They call it a gommage. That's, like, a French word or something. And Expedition 33, at the beginning of the game, in the prologue, it turns from 34 to 33, and everybody that's 34 or 33, I can't remember which one, if it's, like, the next year will die or the current year will die. But everybody of a certain age group dies. So there's no old people. The oldest people are all 33 or 34. And each year, it like gets less. It's a very clever premise and like, oh, what's going on here? This is like a very interesting world setup. It's reminiscent of the great King Piccolo in Dragon Ball, where every year he was going to blow up a country or something. It's also very similar to sort of the conceit of Attack on Titan, which we actually will talk about later also, where it's like, oh, it's like a city and there's an overwhelming threat and like there's these scout-like expeditioners that go off to the continent every year and they have to fight a bunch of monsters and they never succeed, they never come back. It feels very hopeless. People have sort of resigned themselves to their fate. But yeah, the premise is very strong. It's like immediately cool. I think that is probably why the game is as popular as it is. A great premise is really hard to come by. It is like a dime a dozen almost, where like you can explain the premise and it's very immediately interesting. Like Attack on Titan comes to mind. The TV show Lost comes to mind, where it's like people plane crashed in the middle of an island. How do they survive? And now in every one of these aspects, it immediately becomes a very different thing. Like they're all like enshrined in like mystery and stuff like that. And usually supernatural like stuff, but it's like a very simple conceit. Even something like Under the Dome, the TV show that's based off the Stephen King novel, it's like a dome drops down from the sky and what's going on here. Also, of course, the Simpsons movie was like that. There's got to be more, but those are the ones that immediately come to mind. It is interesting, like when you think about like what is the conceit of like Berserk? I don't know. Guts is wandering around fighting things, and then there's like a flashback, and then it kind of becomes about saving Casca, I guess. What the fuck is Berserk about? It's about Guts, I guess. Lame. But I guess like every shonen has like a conceit, but it's just like guy will be ambitious and conquer the world, kinda. Whatever that means for his little context. Evangelion is saving the world from aliens, I guess, is the conceit. But yeah, usually I don't think it conceits too much. It's usually like word of mouth that gets me to consume things. But it was the combination of the both that definitely got me to start this. And just the fact that when people really like something, it's generally a good indicator that it'll at least be good or it'll be interesting if I don't like it. So I'll jump in, which is kind of what the case is here. But if you've read the first the sentence here, so I guess we can transition from the premise into this. It is, I would describe Expedition 33, which I have tentatively on, what's it fucking called? Backlogged? I nearly said backlogged, and then I thought, no, it's Letterboxd. But no, it is backlogged, which is the gaming letterbox. I have tentatively given it a 4 stars. It's kind of, which is /8 out of 10, which I actually have written over here. Now, it is like, it's funny because I was thinking about 8 out of 10s in my head, where there's like disappointing 8 out of 10s, and then there's like excited 8 out of 10s. This is very much a disappointing 8 out of 10, which would be the same. I would describe like a Monster like that, where I was really looking forward to Monster. Everybody says Monster is great, but Monster is just like, oh, it's kind of lame in a few aspects that I don't really like very much. So it's like an 8 out of 10 because it's like there's clearly quality there, but it's also like fuck off with this shit. We never made a full Monster PowerPoint. We only made that tentative one. That's interesting. Chrono Trigger, which we also made a PowerPoint over earlier in the year, which we will reference a few times throughout this PowerPoint. It's a very similar kind of game in a sense. I would also say is a disappointing like a 4/8 out of 10. 4 out of 5, 8 out of 10. You see the math. Expedition 33 would be. It's on the higher aspect. Like Monster is a very disappointing 8 out of 10. Expedition 33 is like an interesting disappointing 8 out of 10. Chrono Trigger is kind of somewhere in the middle. So if we have a graph of these, they're not the best. There's some clear issues I have. I feel like I would say, I don't know, with Chrono Trigger and Expedition, that's how we'll call it. I think I would be excited about things relating to it, or if people were to bring it up to me, like, "Ooh, let me tell you about Expedition 33 or Chrono Trigger. I know some things about this." Or if I like saw cool artwork from it, I'd be like excited. Or like I would make one of my like 50 rotating PC backgrounds a Chrono Trigger image or an Expedition image. That'd be kind of cool. With Monster, I wouldn't be so, because whenever Monster is brought up, I think I'm just annoyed when people are praising it. Whereas these, I would be like, oh, you know. No, I think I get annoyed with both of them, but it's different. I don't know. I would be happy to identify with those two games, whereas I wouldn't be with Monster. I would be happy to identify as a Monster contrarian. Anyway, what a bunch of nonsense. as I have written here, I would say it's a great first game meant condescendingly. I feel like a part of me wants to make a scripted video about this game. I don't know exactly what it will be about, and I think I might extinguish the need to do that through this PowerPoint, through talking about all these various things. We will see, though. I wasn't recording footage while I was playing the first time, so I'd have to play it a second time, which honestly wouldn't be too bad. The best part of the game is actually playing the game, and we'll get into all of that. And the title, if I was going to do it, I might waste the title on this, I'm not sure, would be a great first game meant condescendingly, because all of the dialogue about this game is so like, this is the greatest game, we've just saved video games with this game, can't believe all this AAA slop exists when the great 3 people made this game. That's not true, it was like 30 people or something, but just to emphasize the like mythos around the game, people say shit like that. And you know, they found the guy who did the soundtrack on some weird web forum, and they found the actors on fucking nowhere, and this ragtag group made something way better than Assassin's Creed whatever the fuck. Don't we all hate AAA games, guys? That type of fucking narrative, this game fits it great into it. So yeah, it would be a contrarian title, even though it seems very positive if you have no context. It's very passive-aggressive. There's a lack of polish when comparing it to AAA games, which is interesting, because I do want to kind of counter that strawman narrative I've just brought up, which is, I don't know, this is a terrible place to start, but I guess I'm sort of capping it off with what I didn't like about the game. The biggest problem with the game is, I think, which I have here, is bad writing, bad performances, and bad dialogue writing, which are things that are universally praised about the game. So those are the chief issues. And by bad, I mean, I actually have a Word document that I forgot to refer to when I was making this PowerPoint. And I think one of the notes I have in this, we can go over that at the end if we still have time, is me saying, like, the dialogue is only like 5% cringe, but it poisons the rest of it, which is how I kind of feel in an overall point about that. We'll talk about that more when we get to the next slide, though. But these are just other general, like, things that make it impossible for people to say that, like, this is AAA quality most of the time. There's, like, clipping in cutscenes. I don't even know if that's the right term, but, like, I remember specifically Minoko in a cutscene. I think it's when he's holding the dead Jestrel's body, which is Moko or something. Like, his hand is, like, clipping through the body in a way that's clearly not intentional. And also, like, the cutscenes do kind of look bad around the edges. Like, literally, like, the edges of the character models and stuff like that, which it seems like they either didn't know how to, like, optimize it right in the engine or something. I feel like I vaguely heard Andy Cortez say that in one of the Kind of Funny Things, which sounded right. And, like, the edges of the hair are, like, blurry and stuff. It's like, it looks really weird. The lip syncing is pretty bad, especially outside of cutscenes, in sort of the individual little campfire cutscenes that you can do. Reused assets is something. Now, I don't mean this because I've watched a bunch of podcasts, spoiler casts about the game now. I watched the Jacob Geller video. By the way, the Jacob Geller video is, like, terrible on this. It's, like, just recap and nonsense, and was clearly just there to promote a Nebula podcast he did. It was, like, easily the worst of his videos I've seen, which was very interesting. But I mean, like, I noticed this immediately, where, like, Gustav starts in this, like, garden, and then he walks past, like, a garden, and there's a bunch of posters on a wall, and it's just, like, the same 2 posters over and over again. And I was, like, immediately, like, my Naughty Dog quality indicator went off, and I'm like, well, the great Naughty Dog probably wouldn't have done this. Though, it is funny, The Last of Us Part 2 is my favorite Naughty Dog game, and it probably is the most guilty of doing things like that, where, like, that same dartboard is in, like, everywhere across the world, which is kind of stupid and annoying. Obviously, these are very big games, and fleshing out details like this is very minute and hard to come by. But I did think, like, there are, like, AAA games that would go through these details. It's kind of impossible for them to do that. The back end of this sentence kind of justifies all of these problems, though. And also, a bunch of the things weren't interactable, like the objects, and you just bump into them or you'd fall off, and it was just little janky things like that. How the hair looks a lot of the time is also bad. It is astounding, therefore, that it pulls off a AAA look as much as it does, and the heights it reaches other times, like with Serene, which is one of the accents, I think that's what they're called, which rivals evoking the same emotions visually as the best Uncharted locations do. So it has a bunch of these issues, and then it has moments where it hits. Like, I would say generally, like, 90% of the time, it pulls off looking like a AAA game in a sense. Now I need to qualify all these things with. This is like the first PS5 game I think I've played that's like native to PS5. I don't know if this game is on previous gen consoles, but like I haven't played. Oh, even I was gonna say like Ragnarok or Horizon 2. I think both of those games have PS4 versions. Now, what I've seen of those games, they do obviously look better than this game, especially Horizon, and even like old games like Uncharted 4 probably looks well better than this, and that game came out in 2016 or something. The Last of Us Part 2 looks better than this, etc., etc. But it doesn't look like a downgrade most of the time. If you're just running around sort of the in the dungeons, it's like this. It looks basically the same. It's like in the same category as all these games. So it is remarkable that they pull it off, and especially in the serene area where you go into the Colosseum, it does remind me of the Uncharted 3 like city at the end. And it's just like full of wonder, and it's so big, and so much is going on visually, and it's so bright, and like she's dancing off in the distance. It probably is the best moment of the game when you first go in there, and this singing is in the OST. It's an incredible moment, and it pulls moments like that off a lot. Like there's a bunch of visual moments like that, like when you first run into the underwater, not underwater, weird, abstract sort of area that's like the second main area of the game. Well, the second main area on the continent of the game. Even Lumiere looks and has a distinct look to it. Eventually into the game, I don't know, this is a point I have later, but I don't really like that the game, and most games with world maps do this, where it's like they feel the need to incorporate every sort of like biome or location in it. So it's like, oh, we're going through like the fieldy area, and now there's like a deserty area, and now there's like a lakey area, and now there's like an ocean beachy area, now there's a cliff area, now there's, and this is always the worst one, a shitty snow area, because snow is really bad. I hate snow, especially in video games. I feel like Uncharted obviously does this the best. But like, even when I remember playing Horizon Zero Dawn back in the day, and you're like, oh, this is like, now we're in like the desert part, and there's like a snowy part over here, and it's like these, like, there shouldn't be this much environmental like diversity in this like one location. Now, obviously, this is a much more fantastical world, so you can justify it that way. But it still feels like, can we, like, I feel like we would have a stronger visual identity if it was like just all one thing. The Last of Us 2 does this. Many other games would, where they kind of stick to one sort of location. It gives the game a more distinct vibe, I think, in a sense. But almost certainly it wouldn't have been deserty, and it wouldn't have been Colosseum-y, and we wouldn't have got that siren moment without it. So maybe I should shut my fucking mouth. So that's that first stop point. I'm going to come off more negative than I am, which is something I always say, but I think I always mean in this review, that is. I think the game is inspirational in a sense of it existing. It is crazy. Again, these 30 people pulled this off, and it looks as good as it does most of the time. I guess the initial, like, sort of nitpicking I did at the front is, again, people just, like, overrate the game so much, where it's like, it looks better than any AAA game, and oh my goodness, this proves that you don't need this, and if you just kept the wokeness out of the games or whatever, it would be great. It's like, the glazes are starting off too strong. We got to whip them back into shape. We got to yank that Overton window change back in this direction, and sort of look at it as this sort of marvel of achievement, I think. Because the video game industry is going through strife where a lot of these massively over-budgeted games are not making returns, and everyone's getting fired, and like Ubisoft is going under, and crazy like titans of industry that shouldn't be in these bad decisions, like EA is shifting their whole fucking dynamic because that one Dragon Age game didn't do nearly as good as they wanted it to do, etc., etc. So games like this that can somehow pull this off like this is probably a more sustainable like future and stuff like that. So in sort of that general context, it's very it's very good that it exists. I'm missing a better adjective here, but it is also like inspirational, I would say, in sort of like how did they actually achieve this? And this was sort of, and I remember this because I was vaguely paying attention at the time. The preamble before the game came out is everybody saw the trailers, and it was like a studio they'd never heard of. And then the studio was like, it was known that they were very small and stuff like that. And the game seemed as grand as it actually is. And so everybody was like, this is clearly like deceptive trailering or whatever. And this game, don't like buy into the hype, this game isn't going to be that good. And then it came out and it lived up to those expectations, basically. So that is all pretty remarkable. And then I'm just justifying my fandom here, where I say, I will get the fanboy soyboy chills at the Game Awards when the soundtrack is played in the orchestra, which they already did at one of those Jeff Keighley Gamescom shows. I think they did Alicia live, and I watched it, and I was like, oh, this is fucking sick. I'm crying. So yes, I'm not that much of a hater-ass hater. And I'm not saying it's trash or nothing like that. Just a little disappointing. Depending on what else I play this year, it might just be rooting for it to win Game of the Year. Which a lot of people are. If you go anywhere in any comment section about this game, everyone is like, this game better win Game of the Year or we'll riot. And it's like a bunch of maddening things. I'm leaning towards it probably will, just because of the context of what it means for the industry. Like I sort of went over, and it being a small team is probably something that the Game Awards would like to highlight and stuff like that. And because all the contenders are like small indie games, or like Kingdom Come and Deliverance 2, which is not going to win. And Ghost of Yotei just came out, and I think IGN gave it an 8, so it's not winning. And it's like the only big Sony game. Well, I guess besides Death Stranding 2, which is probably not going to win. The biggest ones are Hades 2, which came out today and got 10s everywhere, I think. And Silksong. Both of which I think will like cancel each other out. If only one of them had come out this year, they probably would have gotten it, either one of them. But the fact that they didn't, I think it will be this game. Which I do think is like crazy. I'm sure those games are probably better. I don't know why, but they're probably more well-rounded and polished, I would say, for what they are. I don't know. Silksong has also got like IGN only gave that a 9. I don't know. Game of the Year, who needs it? Is there anything else coming out this year? I don't think so. Ghost of Yotei was like the last contender, I think, really. Like all the big games, like I assume there's a Call of Duty coming out, it's not going to win. Anyway, we're over this discourse. Blue Prince is also the other one, which I am interested in playing. Even if I think the game is a 4/8 overall, and most of the praise from the game and the levels of praise is insane. It is true, and this is kind of the first point where constantly, like, even like people that don't like the game as much, like on these various podcasts I watch, it's like the Last Stand Media podcast or the Kind of Funny podcasts. There's usually a variety of opinions. Like Greg Miller really didn't like the game. Colin had some criticisms of it too. Some other guys on the Last Stand side of things had criticisms too. But they all are like, but the writing is incredible, and the dialogue is incredible, and the performances are just great. And like that is the main critique for me, where I feel like they're not up to par. And again, the par is it's unfair, because a lot of my gaming is like Naughty Dog or Pokemon, and like weird indie management games in between. But and obviously they're not going to be as good in any of these regards as like Naughty Dog games. It's funny because if you are a Rogue Expedition fan that has somehow wandered in here and you're not in my little bubble here on the secondary ENT channel, that's probably like crazy talk, because they probably all think Naughty Dog games are bad and like the devil, and this game is obviously the antithesis of that in some regard. But it's like not even in the same stratosphere, I don't think. As like Uncharted 1, as any of the Uncharted's, definitely, in terms of dialogue writing and dialogue performance. Like general writing in those Uncharted games, like they're a bit wonky, but the plot and the story of Uncharted is like whatever, except for like 4 and Lost Legacy. Like Horizon Zero Dawn's writing, I don't really think was good. I think it kind of loses the plot at the end and is unsatisfying in a bunch of different ways. I think the dialogue is a little stilted. The performances are pretty good. I'd probably put this game on par with like Horizon Zero Dawn, in terms of performances and writing. Like the little bits of God of War Ragnarok, not God of War Ragnarok, just God of War 2018 that I played is obviously better in every category than this. Even like the little sort of other games, like any of the like Firewatch or Gone Home or any of those games, is obviously much better. Like I don't think these performances are especially good, like I think most of the time they're pretty all right. And I guess character writing is also an issue. I really didn't care about the story, and the premise is very interesting. Now, obviously, my second dot point here is betraying the premise. So that kind of goes away too. it's just like it's so funny that the people that would praise this, like it's obviously hypocritical in a sense, because I feel like a lot of it now. This is a very reductive thing to say, and I feel like this is sort of it's not shorthand for bad writing. It's shorthand for like a certain type of writing. But this game has Marvel writing all over it, really. And I do mean that kind of in the negative sense. It's not to the level of Marvel either, as in Marvel is written better usually, or in its best moments, definitely. Like I think, and this is also in my notes in my separate document, was like Sophie and Gustave's romance is introduced by them like talking over each other, and it's supposed to be cute and endearing, but it's like awkwardly like paced and phrased, and it's like, oh, this is like bad, like laughably bad writing here, like dialogue writing, and I don't like this at all. All the jokes they have, like Gustave and Mael's relationship, I was like, this is like, ugh, this is like generic and very flat, and this is trying to be cute, but it's not. It's like the performances are not on the level to be pulling off this dialogue if you're going to go for it. And it's not even my favorite dialogue type writing. I really do like Ciel and Loon, but Ciel especially had a lot of lines that I sort of had to grit my teeth through. It's like, oh, that's a little cringe. I guess I need to quantify cringe more, because I don't mean cringe as in like it actually makes me cringe. I mean cringe as in like, oh, we should have done another take there. Type sort of like, it's not cringe in the like, well, that was awkward, though sometimes it is that. It's like, that was like not good, and I am therefore cringing. And I'm especially sensitive to dialogue like that. That's why I very rarely like dubbed anime and stuff like that, because I feel like it falls into that trap quite a bit. There are some good performances. I have written them out here. Again, I'm trying to justify that I'm not an absolute hater here. The letter scene is probably the best one. I think that might be because there's an effect over the voice acting. But there is a letter towards what the very end of Act 2, where it's from Alicia to Gustave. Well, it's supposed to be to Mael. Actually, one of the dialogue options I got today, because I am still playing through the game, I should say. I finished the story and everything, but I have just started the going back through and trying to 100% things, and I hadn't maxed out all of the conversations, the side conversations, before I finished the game. I thought I had, but obviously there was more that if I had gone into camp by choice, I could have done more. But Mael talks about how she like found the letter or something. She didn't say anything interesting, because none of those camp scenes are ever any interesting, but that's a different complaint for later down the PowerPoint. But yes, that letter scene is performed very well. There's also some journal entries that are performed very well. There are some journal entries that are very bad, though. I shouldn't say very bad. It's just obviously not good enough for the praise it gets. See how I quantified and added that little last bit? It's like, it feels like some of them are like Mama's first attempt to put like emotion into your acting, or it's like they enunciate words longly to show trauma or something. It's like, it feels so, you can see the gears turning, and you feel the genericism seep in. It's like, oh, no, please. Some of them are funny. Again, I think the way I phrased it before is like the best, is like 5% of it is bad, and it is always noticeable, and it sort of poisons the rest of it. I don't know how else to phrase it. There are other like writing shortcomings, I think. And now another famous story behind the game is like the woman that wrote the game hadn't really written anything before, I don't think, especially not games. In the video I watched, I think they said like, oh, she used to do like marketing or something. I don't remember the exact story. I kind of feel it a little bit. And this is where the Arcane comparison comes the most in, where it feels like somebody's like, I would say the same thing. Now, I am much harsher on Arcane than this game. Like, I would give Arcane like a low 7 out of 10, I think. But like, Arcane would be like a great first show, meant condescendingly. Obviously, Arcane is very strong visually a lot of the time, but like, I don't really like most of the characters in it. I feel like all the scenarios are very generic. I don't like the general vibe and stuff like that. It's kind of similar here, where it's like, the thing that sticks out to the most is like Gustave and Mael's like a rock throwing thing, where I'm like, this is like the weakest like first idea of like a character moment slash metaphor I've ever seen in my life. And it like annoyed me because we start off doing that and the throw doesn't look very good. And then it's not even like they're skipping rocks. They're just like throwing rocks and trying to hit the paintress, but obviously failing. And I know, I get that it's the metaphor, like, oh, they fail, but they still try and stuff like that. And it brings them peace and like it makes them feel like they're doing something. So you can write out the metaphor a bunch of ways, but like the portrayal of it is very lame to me. It's like, what are we doing here? We can come up with a better metaphor, I think, or at least visually represent it better. But yeah, a lot of the character relationships therein felt flat to me. Maëlle has like an outburst after Gustave's died. Like every time she would see Renoir and like be like, I'm gonna kill him or something. It was like, kill yourself, get away from me. Like this is terrible. It's not terrible. It's like okay, but it's like I needed something more from this for this to be this great game. A lot of stuff like that. Her like attacking, like there's these like very generic plot beats that just annoyed me. Like Maëlle like turns on everybody and says some mean things about how can you be so like upbeat and like in on the adventure right now when Gustave just died, and like there's the plot beat, and I think this happens twice where it's like, can Verso be trusted? And it's like, I don't need this. Like, can we do something more interesting? Now, the funny thing is with the Verso thing is it kind of comes back in the end, and it's like, oh, you actually kind of couldn't trust him the whole time. Isn't that crazy? Which is whatever. But even then. But character reactions and character interactions I have written down here are something. Sometimes they were good. There's other problems with like which characters are focused on too, which I think I go into in the next one, yeah, because the next one is all about characters. I wish I had more examples, and honestly, I would just have to watch them with everybody and be like, well, that part I didn't like, and that part I didn't like, to go through more specific examples. I think the character archetypes, I think it is Lune and Ciel that are like interesting. Though I have this written down here, where it's like Esque, Luna, Ciel are like the best characters, and the rest don't really matter. I really like Esque. He's like easily my favorite character in this. I think he's great. I think his performance is tremendous. I like everything about him. I think he's hilarious. I think he's very endearing. I think when he has poignant things to say, they're pretty powerful and stuff like that. He likes the rocks. It's really cool. Lune and Ciel are more interesting. Lune is very interesting. It's pretty obvious to me that she should have been more heavily the main character. Obviously, the whole plot falls apart if that's the case, but it kind of annoyed me that she was very sidelined. I guess this was another moment where I was like, come on, what are we doing here, game? Was when Gustave, like, tries to kill himself and Lune shows up, and it's like, did we really need him to nearly kill himself for us to understand that this has been a traumatic moment for him? It was kind of annoying. There are other like little annoying plot beats, like when they first got on the beach and like the expedition leader approaches Renoir and is like, "What are you?" It's like, you're obviously gonna die, brother. Like, we could have attempted this in some sort of a better way and stuff like that. I will say this is kind of, again, with the 8 out of 10s I've been shitting on the whole video with Chrono Trigger and with Monster. It very much is like the characters never do interesting things. I think that's like the main point. I even think about this like when they confront the paintress at the end. I was like, oh, this could be interesting in a variety of ways. But they don't really characterize her like in any interesting way. Like they start to characterize her as like, oh, she's clearly like not the bad guy. But it's all like plot related, mystery related stuff. And like, that's really not that interesting. Especially when you're about to like fumble the bag entirely in that scenario, to me at least. So I don't know. None of the characters really, like, I'm pretty sure I like Lune and Ciel because they're both really hot. And they've got cool, like, base personalities. And Esque is great in his own regard. But other than that, like, they didn't really have any interesting moments. Like, Lune's most interesting moment is in the ending where she dies, or when they all get erased, and she kind of just, like, squats and, like, death stares Verso. Like, that was cool. There are some cool moments throughout. I'm just forgetting certain ones. Again, it's not all bad. It's like 5% bad, but it poisons the rest of it. What a great line. I'm going to repeat it a million times. Let's kind of move on to breaking the premise. I don't know if the game ever outdoes the immediate impression it gives off with the title screen and the prologue. When you transition into playing as Sophie, my goodness, what a moment. This is true. I think this is betraying the premise overall is sort of the premise is not what it is initially sold as, and is not as initially cool, which is kind of what I talked about in Lost, where it's like not really about people surviving on a deserted island after a plane crash. It's like about spirits and stuff. I don't know. I only watched season 1 and the first part of season 2, and I know some cultural things. And I have Attack on Titan written down here, and I'll explore that a little bit more. But obviously, Attack on Titan in the end isn't actually about like human-eating titans trying to kill humanity. Like there's a whole political thing going on. And I hated that we got away from that in this game. I don't really have an opinion on Lost. In Attack on Titan, I have grown more conflicted over the years on whether or not like the direction of the last arc was a complete mistake or whether or not it's the best part of the manga. But we'll explore that whenever I read Attack on Titan, which probably won't be too far away. But I think the game would have been infinitely better if it was more straightforward and it was just like them attacking the paintress. Like I remember, I guess I should backtrack a little bit. So when you first download the game and then you hover over it on the cross media bar, and then like the Alicia song starts playing, and you're like, whoa, this is like a whole ass vibe right now. This is like cool as fuck. This is like, and it feels grand, and it's like, oh, this is the game I've heard so much about. Then you open it up, it goes to the title screen, Alicia starts playing again, and you probably don't even recognize it as the song from before because this is on the second time you're hearing it. And you just, I feel like I've heard everybody that's played this game has this moment where they just like linger on the title screen, they listen to the song, and they're like, holy fucking shit, what is this sound right now? What is going on? We're in for the game of the century here. The people must have been right. And then you sort of get into the game, and the dialogue and the writing sort of did stand out to me immediately as like, oh, this is not quite as good as I wish it was. Lumiere, the song starts playing. Some fucking fireworks going on. And like you're running around Lumiere, and it's got such a vibe to it, and it's like it's all like whites and there's melancholy everywhere, and like you're not really introduced to the premise. Like the game really never explains the premise to you. You sort of just figure it out through dialogue hints and stuff like that. And then you meet Sophie, and then you come out of the cutscene, and like Sophie walks away from the camera, and you're like, holy shit, I'm playing as this Sophie girl now, and that's really cool. It kind of did ruin it for me when I realized you could press the R3 button. Right? No, it's L3, I think. And you can switch back to Gustav, and they like that effect of them as you switch characters is really cool. But I was like, oh, I would rather just play Sophie right now, playing with perspective a little bit. Obviously, you can't really play Sophie because she's not a playable character in combat at all. But there's sort of confusion at the beginning. You're like, is Sophie the one that's going off on the expedition, and Gustav is staying behind? Why is she like getting the roses? Are they sending her off? But it's no, because she's like gamaging at the end, and then Gustav is going to go off. I don't think the game ever lives up to that. Like immediately when at first you go on the expedition, you go across, and it's really exciting. Like everything you interact with in Lumiere is really interesting. All the environments are interesting. You've had these 2 great songs that keep playing. Your first like sort of introductions with combat, with the mime and stuff like that is all really cool. Then you like see her off, and she actually dies, and you're not really sure if she's gonna die, and then she dies, and it's like, oh, that's a hell of a way to start the game. This is kind of crazy. It's like the sunset, and then you sort of have the party afterwards, and you're going to go off to the thing, and like you understand that Mael is going with you and all these sorts of other things, and you meet some of the other characters, and you head off on the boat, and you're like, oh, this is like exceptional stuff. And then you get on the island. It's kind of immediately, as soon as I saw that Renoir was there, obviously there's interesting mysteries of like, how's there an old guy here? And it kind of immediately changes your thing, because you're like, oh, it's going to be like monsters and the paintress. Well, initially you're like, oh, they just ride straight up to the paintress, right? And something's going to happen there. That's interesting. But no, there's like a whole continent between you and her, which I think is kind of lame a little bit. But then he's like on the beach, and initially, like immediately I sort of started to have like creeping things of like, this is going to be about people, isn't it? And like this guy is the paintress or something. Or there is immediate intrigue, but the intrigue is killed as you progress, where it very evidently becomes like, and it's sort of unabashedly this by the end, but it's not about this world. It's about like this one family's grief, and I just think it's really like lame. Again, there's some positive aspects to it. But I have written down here, personalizing the premise and the world, making it feel smaller. It sort of betrays the premise in a bunch of different ways because you realize that like you're going to be collecting journals from all these other expeditions, and I feel like it would have been so cool. And this is kind of in the game, but again, by the end, it's kind of made meaningless. Is like you find these little journals of each expedition, kind of explaining how they like died and stuff like that, and you can sort of see that it's like general like environmental storytelling stuff, where you can kind of see how they died and where they died and all this stuff. It would have been cool. Now, this game also has a problem with this, and it's with its like very slight non-linearity that it has, where like all the cool like side stuff can't really have any actual answers, and it would be really cool if they did have actual answers. But you can't because they're all optional and easily missable. Like it would have been cool if like the mysteries were revealed through the journal entries, and you had to find them and stuff like that, and each one had new intrigues or something like that. But in the end, it's all like, my name is Brian, and I really hope Jeannie is okay. We really got through this thing, and then we found this monster that you're about to fight, and man, it fucked us up. And it's sort of just like a tiny little heartfelt story and a preview for the monster that's coming up. And it's like, kill yourself. I truly think it would have been cooler if it was just, you can still do you very easily could have interestingly characterized the Paintress as sort of like this god being that sort of doesn't understand humanity. You can give her humanity in like sections. And in the beginning of the game, you sort of get this where you meet like Eske, and you're like, and there's like a gestural village, and you're like, how does this all tie in to make it like a consistent world, and how this is all hinted out, and what's really going on here, and all this stuff. The game kind of does the ultimate cop-out at the end, because the reveal eventually, if you're listening to this and you don't know, is that like the whole world you're playing in is just like the painting of the second main character after the first main character dies. Verso's like, the Verso you're playing as is like a clone of Verso who died in the real world, because this world is not the real world, in a fire. And like this painting, which is the world you exist in, was like his painting. It's sort of the last essence of his life. And all the bad guys, the Paintress, the Renoir, all the sister and all this stuff, are all his family members that have all come to like live in this painting because they miss him. While the father is kind of trying to get his family out of the painting. And it sort of throws away all this stuff of like, well, you don't really need to explain the cohesive world or any of this stuff, because it's just like the kid's, like his childhood imagination, and his pals here, like Eske and Minoko and stuff, and all these gestrels, these wacky little creatures, were just the imagination of a little kid and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, isn't that cool? And it's like all the abstract imagery you see, it doesn't really mean too much. It's just like his thoughts and artistic expression. And I think this, despite the praise pretty consistently for this game, if there is one thing that's criticized, it is this twist at the end, where it is like compared to, it was all a dream thing. Now again, this is all an execution issue, because obviously all the worlds in this game are fake. And like part of the point of the game is like this fake world is not so different, and like humans creating a world doesn't really make the world less vivid to the people that live in it, etc., etc. Though there is sort of like an inherent thing that goes, it's not real, it doesn't matter, that you sort of have to overcome. Even that, though that can be played into the metaphor to like make the metaphor stronger in a bunch of regards. But I don't know, I just don't care about the family drama too much. The older sister that you never really interact with too much, she like clearly seems like the most interesting one, where she's like brash and acts like she doesn't give a fuck that the family is in the painting, and she's like trying to keep things together and stuff like that. Whereas everybody else is very overdramatic in the other direction. It also makes it feel small, and I get that that's the point, and that's what most fiction does, is it makes like a small issue and like expands it to be like world ending. Where like every anime is just like sadness incarnate has come down, and you've got to learn to overcome sadness or something. This is like the same thing, but in this game it's grief. And part of you is like, a mother's grief for her dead child is obviously a very powerful, like lifelong haunting thing. But also part of you is like, just get over it. Like, don't destroy worlds and destroy your own life not getting over it, I guess, is more the like sentiment. Like, I know people whose children have died, and they are eternally sad about it. They are probably more sad, and they will always be like 10% more sad than they were before it. But they do like laugh and find enjoyment. Like, I'm sure they're constantly reminded every day that their kid is dead, and it makes them very sad, profoundly sad. But like, this is like 20% of their day probably, and it's like it feels like so. And there's actually a good point, and actually one of the side things that I've been shitting on the whole time, where Ciel has a moment where she's like, if you like gave me the chance to like create a world where because her husband had died in the past and that was part of her grief, where like my husband was back today and I had made her like you because she was talking to Verso like this, who was sort of like feels like this husk of a person because he is like the kind of fake clone of the guy that died in real life. And she said, no, I probably wouldn't doom him to this life that you live where you are very depressed about how you came to be and stuff like that. But if you would ask me like the day after he died, of course I would have said it. So I guess it depends how long after the death the paintress, the mother, had decided to go into the thing. But it's also said like it's been like 67 years inside the painting or something. It's like, Jesus Christ. But that's also kind of the point that she hasn't given herself time to actually get over it because she's dove right into this fantasy world. And obviously that the last stop point on this thing is about meta. It's like, oh, well, that's kind of like a meta thing. It is very interesting because I sort of had this discussion with Elite Ari when we were talking about Mushoku Tensei, where I was like, obviously, like the end of an isekai anime has to be like the guy getting transported back to the real world and like taking on everything he's learned to more greatly appreciate like the real world, right? It can't be like, hope you die and end up in this fake world so you can like have a better life, which is very Evangelion pilled because that is like the thematic conclusion of Evangelion about how you can't really choose to live in this fake world where everything is good for you and stuff like that, in this primordial soup where everybody gets along and there is no hedgehog's dilemma or anything like that. And Shinji courageously and Asuka courageously at the end of the anime make the decision to go back to the real world because it's real and you have to work in the real world and stuff like that. I'm almost certain Mushoku Tensei is not going to have that outcome. And it's very interesting that this is another thing where that sort of isn't necessarily the proper outcome either, or it is at least very ambiguous which way you're supposed to go. The Mael ending, there are two endings, which is actually the next dot point here, and the Mael ending does seem a little sinister, and it seems like maybe that is the bad one, and keeping the painting around and the world you've lived in is like maybe the bad answer. And the other ending does seem like, oh, the family is all out of the painting, but they seem to be in the right direction or something like that. But it's not entirely that way. Like, there's very tonal things that are odd about both of them. And also, like, to get that good ending, you have to, like, kill the characters you've been playing as the whole time, which doesn't feel right. Because this distinction between real and fake, especially if you can prove that they're having a conscious experience, really doesn't matter. Which you can probably concede in this world. It's just interesting though if we're doing a spectrum like that. I guess the thematic resolution wasn't as generic as something as say Evangelion, which I had taken to be sort of the generic resolution. Though now the two of the things on this fake graph I'm making are leading in the other direction. Anyway, I just wish, like, I remember starting the game. This is the point I was trying to get to before. I remember starting the game and being like, because obviously it's very depressed, and you sort of have this understanding whenever you start a story and it's like this where everybody's like, there's no hope and like we failed a million times. It's like, well, obviously we're going to succeed this time. Now, a great thing would have been if we had failed at the end to kill the paintress or something, and then the sequel is Expedition 32, or even skip a few, go like Expedition 29, and that's when you actually pay it off. The problem is this game has no payoff in that regard because, again, it shifts into telling a completely different story. But I remember at the beginning being like, well, they're so hopeless. Like, I'm very invested in succeeding. Like, Sophie just got gumaged. All these people live in constant fear, and, like, that doom time clock thing is, like, my greatest fear in life of, like, I've only got, like, an hour left in my weekend. How am I going to spend it? And I start freaking out. Like, imagine if this is life, or like you have cancer or something. You're going to die in 6 months. How do you spend those last 6 months? This is like the extreme of that, where like you've only got like 30 years to live. What are you going to do? Are you going to have children and stuff like that? Which is things that are brought up in the game. It's like, oh, I would definitely like to like remove that choice from everybody and make this a much happier, less melancholic world. Like, I'm very invested in defeating the paintress in this regard. And for them to like personalize the premise in this way and like completely remove that and be like, oh, actually the paintress was saving everybody, and now that she's gone, the Renoir is just going to delete the thing, and this is all a fake world, and we're just going to get rid of that. Like, I really wanted the moment where they come back to Lumiere after winning. Oh, we cut. Oh my goodness, who is in this call doing duck noises? Let's check chat. Do you think they leave? This happened last time. I remember this is a great prankster. What's going on here? Look, there's nobody here. Now, last time I checked this, so maybe the duck noise is from something else. I kind of hit the laptop when I did that, so I was trying to hit it again to see if the duck noises happen. But I should be able to see on the recording, like another icon pop up here if somebody jumped in. But I remember this happened last PowerPoint, and I checked it, and there was nobody here. So was that a ghost duck sound? Is that duck sound built into PowerPoint or something? I don't know what the fuck's the go here. Did I hit a key in because I'm in the Discord call right now because I want my little icon to be in the corner here? Did I accidentally hit a key that's like a hotkey to making one of the sounds in the Discord call? I have no idea. Somebody out there knows the answers to these questions. Like a moment where we cut back to Lumiere, if we come back to what I just said, where like they see like the number disappear or something, and like the catharsis that would be there from like the people who know that the expedition after all this time succeeded, and the reaction. You can cut to like Emma or the apprentices, and they could like react like that, and then like the heroes return when they like get back, and it, like this great visceral moment that could have been, that is kind of like the cheering when I guess they get back from Shiganshina or Attack on Titan or something like that. Like this would have been like a great cathartic moment, much better than anything that's actually in the game. And they almost like try to do that a little bit when they do return to Lumiere, but it's like there's clearly like more going on at that point, and you realize like that stuff's like not going to be wrapping up here, and the reaction is not nearly as satisfying as I would want it to be, with like people screaming or crying or whatever. There are just some shows that do that so well. Like One Piece comes immediately to mind, like the panel where Luffy sees Sabo, and it's like he is like ecstatic, like how that is portrayed is so good, and that's like I want everybody to be doing that face when they see the monolith floor, and then when they see their like hero guys come back and stuff like that. Like this would be so cool. But they like completely undercut that to do some shitty storyline where they're painting or something. And I'm like, this is fucking lame. Now, I do understand that a lot of this is like, I just wish the story was different. But I feel like you were sold this story at the beginning, and the replacement is never as good. Whereas I think, which is why I have Attack on Titan written down here, that Attack on Titan is very good at like slowly shifting the goal. Well, I guess this game slowly does it too, but it shifts it into something very interesting, and it sort of ties it into like the basement reveal is just the reveal that the world exists outside of Paradis. And that is like a crazy thing, because when you first started Attack on Titan, there are a few like potentialities. And I remember one of the potentialities that I thought when I was like 13 years old, first getting into it, and we were only up to the Uprising arc, was like, they could be on an island or something. And the fact that they are on an island, plus like the rest of the world exists out there, and like the whole time you've been like wondering what Reiner's hometown looks like, and him describing it as like a hometown is like crazy and stuff. And then for it to be like a whole world civilization is like a crazy. It's like a much better like subversion than this, which I didn't really like at all. So it works there, whereas it doesn't work here, I guess is my general point. I guess making it feel smaller, it does feel smaller, and that's not so good. I feel like every story eventually does that, where they personalize it to some extent. But I don't know, you could have done some characterizing with the paintress, and there seemed to be like, and it kind of seemed to be going that direction initially, where it's like, it was very clear that she was a person at some point, and I think a lot of interesting stuff could have been done with that, with like how this power came to her or something like that. And all of that could have been much more interesting. There's also conflict in me, because I feel like the premise of like, this is like, the premise is sort of something I would like think up myself, I think, where it's not the premise about the expedition and stuff like that, but the premise of like, you're in this really cool world for like 80% of the journey, and then the other shoe drops, where it's like, it was just a fake world, and there's this actual real world going on over here, and this is like a crazy twist towards the end, and like, did you see it coming and stuff like that? Which I really didn't see that part coming. Because I thought it was like meta, but it was meta in its own world rather than it there being a second world. I don't know where I was going with that point. What was I just saying? Painterous, something, making it feel smaller. It was going in a certain direction. Twist, something. I didn't like the twist. I know it's conscience, and I know the fan base is very like ready to fight this point, because I saw a comment in one of the podcasts. One of the guys had said like, they just said everything was fake, and then I couldn't care anymore. And the comments were like, I immediately dismiss anybody's opinion on the Great Clair Expedition 33 if they ever say the word fake world. This is just not what's happening, or something. I was like, oh, clearly they've heard this criticism, and they're very defensive against it, which is funny. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like the more straightforward story in that sense would have been much easier and had much better like catharsis to it. And I get part of the point is that none of the endings have a lot of catharsis. They are very messy and weird. And like, you're not really supposed to feel great about either one of them. But I don't think it was profound in any way where I'm like stuck with the melancholy of either of the endings. I guess I should say I chose the Mael ending initially because I literally did the math of like, I like Loon and CL better, so I'll just do the ending where it seems like they're gonna survive. But they're not very explicit initially on what like your choice is. And also I almost chose Verso because I never used Mael, and I was like, I could probably win this battle easier, but it turned out the battle was easy anyway. Which is funny. But anyway, what do I have written down about the ending choices here? Oh wait, I didn't read the last bit of this. This leads to the it was all fake thing that isn't really true, but feels true. The ending choices. I think the multiple choices are bad. I think multiple choices are bad now because I was disappointed in Chrono Trigger's lack of a difference in its endings, and I'm disappointed in Expedition's lack of closure. True. I do kind of hate... And I've never really thought of this, because the idea of a game having multiple endings was always really interesting to me, but it becomes immediately uninteresting where I have to sort of like, because of my fake job hobby here, like I'm obviously going to look up the other ending, which means like it really doesn't matter which choice I make because I'm not really going to feel like either of them is real. I wonder what it's like with games that actually do have like 9 endings or something. Because you are just immediately after you finish going to look up all the endings on YouTube, right? And then like what's the difference between your ending and either one of these ones? Like none of them are, like I feel like the problem is none of them are going to feel real, and it kind of feels like the game doesn't have an ending now. Because I'm never going to take the ending I get as like the canon ending or like the real one. I've really just never engaged with this. I think Mass Effect has multiple endings, but I feel like I've also heard that it's just like whichever characters survive get to be there or something like that. I guess the other option is what I hear Baldur's Gate 3 is like, where there's just like an infinite number of endings. I guess you sort of have to buy into choice, which this game has no choice but that last choice, which is maybe where it lacks. I've never actually finished a Telltale game, so I wonder what that's like. I guess the bonus / the negative thing of this game is that it literally just to get the other ending, you just have to watch a different like 7-minute cutscene. Whereas if like every scene from like the beginning was different depending on your choices throughout the game, and like it was much more divergent, I guess like, I don't know. It's like hard because then you would just like replay the game, right? And like which version of the game do you actually believe like happened or something? This is like a very frigid, like silly thing to get hung up on, but I don't think I could ever get over it. Because the problem with Chrono Trigger was that like all the endings were the same. It didn't actually matter. Like there was a fake ending if you like lost the final battle, but then you would just retry it anyway. And then there's like a medium ending where it's like, oh, we can still go back and save such and such that we didn't save because you didn't do a certain side quest. And then there's like the full celebration ending. But like none of them are meaningfully, well, they are. It's just clear that the celebration one is the actual ending, and the other ones are just like telling you that there's still stuff you can do, and then you can come back and get the proper ending. And obviously the bad ending is like nobody's going to stop playing once they lose the final battle once and they get the you failed to change the world thingy or whatever. And here it's just like two different kind of things. If anything, I lead towards the one that I didn't choose being the more canon one. I guess there could be fun or like beauty in the possibility of multiple endings, and then you sort of just choose the one you think fits the most. And there's sort of ambiguity there. And I guess it's not the worst thing if you shift over time. I don't know, I just really don't know. The other problem is if they ever do a sequel, they have to choose an ending, which is going to retroactively make an ending really bad. I know they do this with fighting games a lot, where it's like, there's a bunch of different endings depending on which character you choose to play as or whatever. And then they like immediately get like thrown out when the next game comes out, which probably feels really shitty. It would be really interesting in the marketing thing. Like the first trailer comes out and you're trying to pinpoint which one was like real, though it would be very obvious in this case because one, you'd be in two different worlds depending on which ending they choose. I don't know. There's really never been a piece of media I've engaged with that have like multiple endings that are very story driven like this. Because I've never really played a game like this besides Chrono Trigger, I guess. And TV shows and movies and stuff all just have one ending, right? Well, I guess there is the movie Clue, which has 3 endings. But really the only thing different is the ending scene, and that's like a cute gimmick because it's Clue. But also, obviously, the canon one is the one where everybody did a different part, right? I guess that's just a choice I've made, but that like seems so obvious to me. What a funny movie. I should go back and watch that movie. I don't remember in what context I initially watched that movie. Interesting. Anyway, there's a more fleshed out Arcane comparison thing. The biggest comparison is like everybody really likes Arcane, everybody really likes this game, and they have such obvious like writing and dialogue and performance issues to me that it's like insane to me that other people can't see it. Now, obviously, this clashes with my essential subjectivity, which I hold very near and dear. And I think what I'm about to say is delusional, but I feel like in like 2017, we were all on board with like what was good and what wasn't. And I guess it really is like, well, that fucking Star Wars movie probably came out and ruined everything for everybody. But I felt like there was a consensus, and the consensus wasn't good, and it was based on nothing. But it feels like, didn't we all agree that like corny writing like this was bad? It's like, so why is everybody saying this is like a 10 out of 10 greatest game of all time? Like, don't they all see it? And the answer is probably just, I'm imagining that time of consensus. And the other thing is like, well, the media discourse space is just very different, like nearly 10 years later. And like the internet is exploded to like now all the normies, all the tourists, if you will, now exist in your media consumption space. And they're not going to have like these same like built up axioms about what bad dialogue and bad writing and bad performance is. Arcane is a much bigger like example of this where I'm like, how does anybody think Arcane is like a great all-timer thing? Like it's so obviously shit, even though it's pretty good in parts. This game is kind of like that too a little bit to me. Let's see if when we talk about the characters we'll complain as much, huh? This game has a similar problem to Chrono Trigger, and I imagine most character-based, team-based JRPGs, and that's the illusions of choice with main characters and the ignoring or minimizing of characters and side plots in the main plot. Feels like lost potential. True, I guess this is a big thing. I didn't really say the words lost potential, but I do feel like that's like the whole case with why a lot of the plot is disappointing to me, and especially the turns it takes, where it's like, I feel like this premise could have had such a great execution with like a changing of the journal entries and like actually interesting characters and interesting character relationships and more visceral moments of character interaction and like less plot fuckery. So yes, I guess lost potential is a thing. Feels like lost potential, and you can see like the mechanisms / limitations of the game working. Then I have my ranking here, which is just SK, Luna, and CL. In that order are the best characters, and the rest don't really matter. True. I felt like similar about the rest of them, which is like they're okay, I guess. Like there's not really a character I didn't like. A lot of the side characters and a lot of the NPCs are really quirky. I do like them. But the rest of them, like, whatever. I guess I like Clair, which is not Claire, but CLEA. It is true. My main party the whole game was like Lune, CL, and then Gustav, and then Verso. I didn't really use Mael. I didn't really use Monoko at all. Because they were the default like backup team, and like every time I beat a boss, I did have to use the backup team. They did end up like winning most of the big fights in the end. But they were like easily the two weakest in my party compared to everybody else. Though Verso was pretty weak too. It was really the Luna and it's actually Lune, not Luna. I'm thinking of fucking Fire Punch. And CL like show. CL is really strong. She dies quicker than Lune. And Lune, I got the Hell ability towards the end, which was like the most powerful attack I had easily. So she was the strongest at a point. Anyway, basically in Chrono Trigger, as soon as Chrono dies and he doesn't have to be in the main party anymore, like that son of a bitch has gone to the back end. Like this is a boring son of a bitch. And like obviously, who was my squad? It was always Marl. Marl was my favorite Chrono Trigger character. And then I think Luca was usually in there. Oh, and the other girl. The prehistoric girl. It was always just the three girls. And like Frog and Robo especially were in the background. And here it kind of felt like the same thing where it's like Luna, CL, and then Verso's over here. And then the other two are like in the back and I'm not really using them. And it feels like it's giving you a choice there because you can switch in which characters are important. But it becomes, especially towards the back end, it's like this is about Verso and Mael. And it's like, these are the two characters I probably like the least. Like, I don't want, like, it feels like you give me this choice and I'm like focused and invested in these other two. And it's just like, well, they're just like kind of standing to the side while the plot happens. And it really sucks. And I feel like you would just have to limit, like, you would have to make it so that Verso and Mael are always in the party, and, like, Lune, and you can cycle through the other one. Which obviously sucks from a gameplay perspective and gives you a lot less options. But it kind of ends up in this story problem. And the same thing with Chrono Trigger, where really it didn't... Chrono Trigger was probably worse, where it's like nothing really matters that you choose and which characters you're using. And, like, none of the characters really ever had interesting things to say, like, depending on which ones you chose to bring. Like, the plot would happen the same way. Like, you might get one line of dialogue, but it was really just, like... They all have a dialogue to seem scared in this moment. And it's, like, characterized to them. And they would say that if they were in the party when you did this thing. The games would have to be massively more complicated for this to actually work. Which I assume might be the case in something like Baldur's Gate 3. Too bad Baldur's Gate 3 is like Dungeons & Dragons or some absolutely lame shit, so I'll never play that game. I might. I don't know. Dungeons & Dragons is lame, though. Rolling dice, kill yourself. How about that? So yeah, I don't know. It also makes you, like, resent the characters to a point where it's like, oh, every cutscene is about these two idiots, and you have to run around camp as Verso. I don't want to be this idiot. I want to be Lune. And it's like, I really wish she would, like, be the main person in this cutscene. But it's like she's very, like, sidelined and stuff like that. So the choice is kind of clashing here. And again, like, with the side camp stuff, which is actually what the next dot point is about, like, they probably should have been referenced somehow. There should have been, like, a ticker that, like, ticks off that you've seen that thing. So, like, later in this cutscene, there's, like, a reference to something from them for them to ever feel anything but, like, kind of complete waste of times. Like, the idea is supposed to be, like, you get a little bit of more time hanging out with these characters, but none of the characters are, like, strong enough for that to be interesting, I don't think. So yeah, none of that stuff ever, like, comes to the fore. The camp stuff feels underwhelming. These little awkward side stories and their lower budget portrayals are never referenced and can never be referenced in future canonical cutscenes because they're optional. Sometimes, like with Minoko and SK, they can hint at mysteries, but are never in a rewarding manner. I remember being especially frustrated with not hearing the Lune conversations, because she'll like ask me about previous expeditions, and again, it was sort of like that conceit thing of like, this is obviously the most important thing. Like, we need to figure out like the evidence that these guys figured out something and that they can tell us something about like these grand mysteries. But obviously, like, they don't know anything about the grand mysteries except kind of that one expedition that like the guy drowns or gets gamaged in the water before he gets back. Expedition 60, I think it is. And it's kind of cute, like when you're in Cyrene's place or whatever, and like they've blown through walls so you can get through, and like Verso was like, "Oh yeah, I was with them when they did that" and stuff like that. Like it never really goes anywhere. So yeah, it's sort of like nothing important is gonna ever happen here, so like don't pay too much too much to it. Which I feel like you could have used them better. I don't know. A lot of it comes from a fear of it being optional, which is and considerable fear, justifiably so. I just don't know how you would structure it to be better like this. Also, total sex with Ciel is very underwhelming. True, it's like hinted. It's like referenced. That's what's happening, though you really don't see it. And again, that's never referenced anywhere else either. I don't know. And it also felt weird, like, I think that was another note I had in my other document where it was like, the side conversations with Lune and Ciel are like immediately very flirty. And I don't know, it just felt weird. It felt like an underdeveloped thing that could have been in the game. Also, I have this written down here. The romance was kind of interesting with Gustav, but not really with Verso. True. It was also similar with like Gustav a little bit. Because I think there's a mention at the beginning where Sophie says to Gustav, because Lune is like playing guitar or something at the beginning, and like there's a hint that like, oh, something already happened between Gustav and Lune, and that's never really referenced again. And I thought that would have been really interesting to come back, especially like Gustav, especially when he has such a strong romantic tie to Sophie at the beginning, to have him like choose another girl here would be really interesting. And also when Ciel started bringing up her husband, because I think she's drinking with one of the other guys at the beginning. And I assumed that was her husband or something, which made it really weird. I'm like, well, she's like bringing up her husband, and I'm pretty sure we see that guy die in the beginning. She doesn't seem to be too sad about it, but it was actually a different guy. So that made sense. But so no, I was kind of invested in a potential relationship with like Lune and Gustav. That obviously can't go very far because Gustav is going to die relatively early. And also, like, it could have been fun for Mael to be like the little sister character. That's like kind of a little family dynamic. Lune is also really cool. You know, we should be sexing her. What's going on here? Though Ciel's pretty cool too. But with Verso, it felt different. I don't know. It didn't feel very interesting or rewarding or anything like that. I guess that's the characters. Now the gameplay. Now we can be praisatory. Is everybody excited for me to say some nice things about this game? I'm doing a drink here. The gameplay is incredible in this game. Probably the second best part besides the music. True, the music is really good. The gameplay is so good, though. I'm no stranger to turn-based stuff, but this was my first with action elements. This is true. I played Final Fantasy 1, I played Final Fantasy 2, I played Chrono Trigger, I played Pokemon all my life. I love turn-based games. But this one has action elements. People refer to this as sort of like the Mario RPG-like elements. And I think there's a bunch of other games that have sort of done similar things. This is also my first game with a parry, I think. True, this is all the rage. Everybody loves Souls games, and every action game now apparently has a parry. But I don't think I've ever played a game with a parry until this, and it's really, 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 really fun. So maybe I might like those games and not hate them. I usually don't like hard games either. They make me throw controllers at walls, and this game was very hard in sections, but it was rewarding in the end. I still don't believe this like Souls game player thing where it's like, man, you feel so good after you do it. Like most of the time when I was like having because I did fight some of the really hard optional guys, and I didn't beat all of them. I'm gonna go back and beat all of them now. But I remember there's like even one in like the Spring Meadows that took me like an hour to beat, I think. And it is fun to like learn it and get better, and like your setups at the beginning. It's like, man, I'm already at like the boss's second phase, and like Lune's still alive, and I just healed everybody, and they're at max health. Like this is going well. Whereas there's like ones where you're like, I immediately like missed the first hit, and I'm like, just kill me, just kill me, just kill me. I do feel like most of the time I'm just like happy it's over rather than like happy that I succeeded or something. And I will say a big problem with me playing games is I like there are multiple times where I like played the game like for a very prolonged period of time, which is a testament to the game being fun because I usually don't do that. I use like an hour and then I'm done. With most things, I have a very short attention span in that regard. I can't really like play games all day or something. I know people do that and they love it. But like on the times where I would play like 3 hours, and especially towards the end where I'd be like, all right, I'll finish after this battle, and then it takes me like an hour to do this battle. I'm just like, man, I'm wasting my fucking life. I'm gonna kill myself. I'm wasting my fucking life playing fucking video games. I want to kill myself. I don't know how most people get over it. I feel like most people's lives are like addicted to video games, and so they just like it. Like they go to work to earn money to like, and they work the certain hours they do, so their hours match up with their friends, so they can play like multiplayer games. Whereas I'm like super conscious of time passing constantly, whenever I'm doing anything. There are very few things. It is very funny how my subconscious works, where I'll be like, I'm wasting my fucking time right now. I feel like any consuming will do this, which is funny because it's like my main hobby and I kind of hate it. That's probably why I'm such a miserable person. It is very funny, like the justifications I'll immediately. It's subconsciously. It's just like I'm always like trepidatious to like start a game because I'm like, oh, what a waste of time. Like I'm not gonna really enjoy the method of playing this game probably, and like I'm just doing this so I can talk about it afterwards or like be involved in the conversation or something. And it's really odd. Like you will find things that you just do find fun. Like what comes to mind is like I used to do like internal in my head fantasy wrestling booking, and that was like some of the fun. Like I would spend like 2 hours doing that, and that'd be like so fun for me. Making plans for things is like really fun to me. It is funny that like socializing is kind of a thing where it's immediately like I don't feel like I'm wasting my time. Like any sort of hanging out with women is kind of like that. It's very interesting. What do you even find? I guess like sport, like well, wrestling used to be like that, but I kind of hate wrestling now. Like I never feel like I'm wasting time when I'm watching sport, even though I am wasting time when doing it. I'm always like I should be working on videos, but like the actual method of doing it, find your passions in life, people. It's very difficult, but video games is not mine, so I'm very conscious of like time passing and time wasting, and especially when I'm losing a boss, I'm like, I'm getting nothing out of this. I do not like the thrill of like beating a game. Like this is not something that makes my life feel fulfilled if it's like a hard thing and I beat it. I guess a little bit. But more the reward is like I get to move on now. Like I'm no longer wasting like because when you're watching a movie or something, time is like your friend and you're going to get to the end. With video games, you've got to actually do the damn thing. So it's like it's more on you, and it's like, oh, it's my fault. I'm wasting my life right now. I'm going to die someday, and I'm going to regret that I was playing this game. And if I was actually better at this game, I wouldn't be wasting as much time as I am, and I would have had a more fulfilling life, etc., etc. I would have killed myself. I guess these are just the internal thoughts of a serially unsatisfied depressive or something. But I liked this game. I thought it was fun. The gameplay was the best part. Parrying was really cool. I never dodged. I ain't no pussy. Not once. Like maybe at the beginning I tried dodging. Whenever I would actually like when I was fucking with a boss, I was like maybe I'll try dodging. And like my dodge timing was completely terrible because I had never done it before and I had no idea like when to do it. So just parrying every time. And oh, it's so cool. It is cool when you like parry the whole attack and it's a hard attack and you're like I'm the coolest guy. So I love that. All the gameplay is great. I love the action-based elements here. The Pictos and the Lumina, once I figured them out, were fun. True, it took a little while. And I don't like how it's kind of, the menu navigating is kind of not the best. I have no idea how you would do it better. They even have a favorite system that I never use, so it's probably my fault. It's kind of frustrating that you have to remember after 3 battles to switch them out, and then you got to figure out, oh, what did I even have on these guys, and how do I switch them out, and stuff like that. But the skill tree was cool. Probably the best way I've seen a skill tree be utilized. True, with the skill tree, you actually get to add skills to like they're like your main attacks. You also got a free aim gun feature, which I thought was really cool. I had never seen that in an RPG. But again, I haven't played like any modern RPGs, so I don't know if these are in Persona games or something. I know like the attacking UI is very Persona-like. I might play Metaphor eventually, so we'll see. Persona is just bad because I don't know how to play Persona 1 really. Like modernly. And I know a lot of people don't play those games in order. Plus, you'd probably have to play Shin Megami Tensei first, which I would probably want to do, but that's a whole other can of worms. I don't want to depress myself thinking about it now. But yeah, the skill tree was interesting. Like, skill trees, like, I played Horizon. I remember playing Shadow of Mordor, where it's like you just sort of get more combat abilities, and that always feels weird and like whatever. But here, actually, like, unlocking attacks made me like really invested in the skill tree rather than just clicking whatever. I guess the Far Cry games like that too, and I played a lot of Far Cry. This was another interesting comparison to Chrono Trigger. They're two very different attempts at making turn-based combat more active, and they offer different thrills. I did think about how cool it would be for Chrono Trigger to be reimagined in an aesthetic like this. Maybe I don't hate it after all. Sure, I did think about it a little bit, where I'm like, what if Chrono Trigger was made in like this sort of engine, and we had to flesh out the environments there and how cool the world would look and stuff like that? I was like, oh. And I imagine that is the appeal of the Final Fantasy VII remakes, except those aren't turn-based, which is lame AF. Yeah, that would be really cool. I would like to see a Chrono Trigger remake that isn't a Pixel remake, but is like a Clair Expedition type game, where it's like 3D and you have to flesh out the environments in the world and you got to run around and stuff like that, and seeing the characters and that sort of aesthetic and stuff like that, I think would be really cool. Though a Chrono Trigger remake has been like speculated about forever. But if they do it, it'll probably just be a Pixel remaster thing, which I think is pointless. And all those fucking Final Fantasy Pixel remasters look like hideous. They might be the most hideous looking games I've ever seen in my life, and I'll never play any of them. Luckily, I have them all on the PS1, which is a different type of Pixel remaster, but they actually look good. But yes, these are two very different. Like, in Chrono Trigger, like, there aren't turns, like there's just bars that fill up for you to attack again. And if you just stay idle and you aren't, like, if your hands aren't on the controller rushing constantly, like, the enemy will just attack 3 times before you get an attack off. So in Chrono Trigger, a lot of the tension was like, I need to figure out what I'm doing and I need to figure out now. And like, the enemy might have an attack animation that goes for like 5 seconds, and that's when you've got to figure it out. But you've also got to calculate how much damage or what status like they're implementing on you. And the rush in Chrono Trigger was probably... It might even be better than some of the rushes in this, because in this you do have turns. When it is your turn, you can just stay there forever, and think about what you're going to do, etc. Now, obviously in Chrono Trigger, there's no parrying, or you can't really do anything to avoid attacks or anything like that. So when the enemy attacks, you just got to sort of sit there and wonder. So that's sort of your time to relax, whereas it's the opposite in this. It is two different, very interesting ways of doing it. You can't really merge them because you need some point to like select your moves and stuff like that. I think they're both really cool. I do just like traditional like Pokemon turn-based combat too. They're all cool, and they offer very different rushes, of like the rush of getting the parries right versus the rush of like, okay. And I remember this specifically in the what's the bad guy's name? Not Lavos, but Magnus or whatever, in his fight, and being like, oh my... And also, you don't know how much health they have in Chrono Trigger, which is another very interesting thing, so you have no idea. It's like a battle of attrition, and you don't know when the end is. That's a really cool aspect of that game, too. If you look it up, I guess you know the health, but you don't really... Unless you're having a calculator, you're not going to have a bar at the top telling you how long. So it's just like... So when you realize, oh my god, he's fucking dying, and it's like a relief, and that's really cool. Chrono Trigger is really cool in that regard. Or that type of combat. But they're both really cool. I sound like SK right now. That was pretty cool, huh? I'm a voice actor. I liked the traversal too, even though I hate the multiple paths thing. This is true. This is true in any like third-person game, or any game, I guess, where there's like 2 paths, and you're not immediately clear which one. Like, what I want to do is go down the optional one and then return to the main path, but you don't know which one, so you sort of go like 10 meters down one path, try to see if it's like self-evidently like a dead end and there's like an item there, and then you can pick it up, and with a good conscience you can go the other way. But there are multiple times in this game where it's like both paths go on for a little bit. It's not until you like go down 3 different paths that you realize, okay, this is not the main path, because you're always scared you're going to miss a bunch of cool side stuff. Oh my god, we're going flat. A bunch of cool side content because you're because you take the main path too far. At some point, I just decided, like, I'm just going to choose one of them and follow them all the way through, and if it is the main one, then I miss some stuff, and I'll come back later. But I hate that, like, sort of decision-making. And I guess, like, a mini-map in the corner, which is another big piece of discourse with this game, which I don't really agree with. I don't think there should have been a mini-map in the little dungeons. But, like, that would help that, where you, like, it's clearly, like, one area is, like, the not necessary path. I don't know. It's always like very confusing and overwhelming, but you do figure it out pretty quickly, especially in a game that's this linear and this corridor driven. But once you've internally mapped out something, it's more comfortable, and you feel like you really understand the area. It is true. It does feel like you've like conquered the area when you're like, oh, this leads here and this leads there, and now I understand exactly where I should go. The world map existing was off-putting when I got to it. A fully linear game, like the first 2 or 3 hours, would have been interesting. This is true. I had heard that the game was very linear, and that was probably, and it's short, and that was probably one of the big reasons why I jumped in. I was assuming when I was in the Spring Meadows, and that, like, there was no world map, and everything was going to be a very linear, sort of straight line direction, and I was kind of down for that. And I think a game like that would be interesting, but then you get out and there is a world map, and it is more RPG traditional like that. It was very off-putting when I initially got there and the camera angle was different. I was like, oh, so we are doing this. This is interesting. Because the other way is like a more like Uncharted kind of like JRPG, which would be really interesting to me, where the enemies are on the map, which is also a Chrono Trigger thing, right? And you just sort of go through these very linear locations. I kind of like that. It was kind of immersive that way. There are obviously benefits to the world map situation, like optional dungeons and stuff like that. And obviously, like, backtracking would be really weird without that. Though they do have the flags and stuff, which is how I assumed it was going to work for the first 3 hours, but whatever. Also, I took long as fuck to beat this game. I think I was at, like, 34 hours when I beat it, when most people say it's, like, a 24-hour game, bro. Oh, this is the last slide, so we will probably get through this before we go flat here. These are my miscellaneous notes. The music is obviously great. I don't know if the game ever lives up to the title screen / cross-media bar Alicia introduction. I kind of already talked about this, followed up by Lumiere. Though the boss themes are all really cool too. True, there's also the Minoko theme that people really like. I don't know, jazz makes me cringe a little bit, especially when it's like cool. Like I saw like multiple not TikToks, my goodness, YouTube shorts of like people reacting when they first battle Minoko and like the song comes on, and then like swing out about how cool and wacky it sounds. It makes me cringe really bad. I don't know, it's weird. But the music is really great. Is it the best gaming OST ever? I don't know. I'm probably really partial to like one of the Pokemon games. Even something like Undertale has a really good OST, even if I don't really like that game that much. Oh my. Alas, my overwrought arrogance has led us to this moment where we did indeed just go flat for you. For me, it's been about 24 hours, and I'm here to finish up our little PowerPoint here. I think I was talking about soundtracks and loving Pokemon soundtracks way more than this shitty soundtrack we got going on here in Clair Expedition 23 or something. What the fuck is this game called? So yeah, I think I finished my point on fucking songs and stuff. We got 3 more dot points to go into before I can fucking end this video. Eileen and Renoir's lines during their fights to each other are really cool. This is true. They're like shit-talking each other in their fights because the other one is kind of there. Or vaguely listening. And obviously, most of the game is about them having a little spat. So that was cute. This is a funny point. Monster designs, I'm sick of Berserk's stepchildren. Very funny joke. Basically, every fucking monster looks like a Souls monster, which is obviously Berserk's stepchild. So that's a funny joke. This would be a great YouTube video. Nobody would get the joke. Not enough for it to be successful enough, and not that I would have any expertise in this scenario because I've never played a Souls game. But I've seen lots of YouTube videos on them, and like the hands and stuff, the repeating hands, which is all over monsters here, like a gothic knight looking things. It is really funny because they really don't look anything like Berserk monsters, really. Berserk monsters have such a distinct look of like the weird details and anatomy and the face weirdness, how every apostle's got like a weird face and then a second face on the monster, but their human face is somewhere on the monster, and they're gross and elegant and all these different things. But a lot of the monster designs, I was like, ugh, this is like every monster in every video game nowadays looks like this. Now there are some exceptions, of course. And do I have a good example? I guess the hand one. There is a really cool one where you fall down the bridge and you land in the Eclipse bloody pool, and there's bodies everywhere. You fight a guy there. He looked like a Souls guy, but he was cool. So I guess that criticism doesn't even apply to him. I don't know. You understand what I mean. I'm sure everybody has this complaint about it, but I found a funny way to phrase it. So anyway, do you ever actually, maybe you do it, maybe it's one of the side things, but like the monster at the very beginning that like kills a lot of the expeditioners, this is like the main one I think of where I'm like, oh, he's got like hands, and that's like the anatomy is like, that's like a Souls thing. And also there's like a lamp guy that I know is like, there's a lamp guy in here and in Elden Ring, I think. But I don't remember you ever fighting that guy. Anyway, the game has some cool environments. I'm kind of sick of every game thinking it needs to have every biome in it, though. I think I talked about this earlier in the goddamn motherfucking video. So that might be it. Clair Obscur Expedition 33. It's a video game. It's a very overrated video game, I would say. I like it a lot. Actually, since then, I found another live performance of them performing in the OST in some like French venue, and like when they sing Lumiere, some of the crowd is like singing along, and I was like, oh, that was pretty cool, bro. I don't know. I feel like again, it's probably defined as missed potential. And yeah, I like when their next game comes up, I'm going to be very excited, I think. I hope it isn't a sequel, because I don't really like the direction the world building goes towards the end of this game. Like, I don't really care about the riders and the whatever, even though those pronouns sound really cool. I guess exploring the world outside the planing could be interesting, but I would like to see this team like take on something completely different. Similarly with the same gameplay or something like that. But I don't know. I'll play it whatever it is. Because the gameplay was really fun, and that's what video games are about. No, that's not what video games are about. Who gives a fuck about gameplay? We're here for the great stories. And that's why Naughty Dog Games Clair Obscur Expedition 33. This game sucks. No, it's a 4 out of 5. I wonder if completing it will make it go up, just because, like, I'll be like, man, but the gameplay is really fun. So it's, like, obviously a 4.5. I don't think so, though. I think 8 is, or an 8 or a 4 is, like, already very generous for me. Especially when I think about how disappointing in some aspects the game is, especially compared to its annoying-ass reputation. What is a Clair Obscur? We'll never know. There are enemies called that. But who knows? Anyway, this is where we finally end the old video. Ooh, we just left this part. No, I don't like ending it on this part, so I'm going to make the thing go up again. Support links in the description below. Thanks.